November 23rd, 1939. Shoeburyness mudflats, Thames Estuary. The brass buttons had been cut from his uniform, his wristwatch left with the shore party, even the steel eyelets removed from his boots. Commander John Ouvry approached the dark, cylindrical object lying in the mud with nothing metallic on his person, armed only with non-magnetic brass tools and the knowledge that one wrong move would vaporize him and his team in an instant. The mine that had fallen from a German aircraft the previous night was their first glimpse of Hitler's secret weapon. What Ouvry didn't know was that his actions over the next hour would trigger a technological chess match that would expose the deepest vulnerabilities of the Third Reich's war machine. The object before him represented 3 years of German confidence, scientific superiority that would starve Britain into submission without firing a shot. German naval intelligence had assured the Kriegsmarine that their magnetic mines were undetectable, unsweepable, and would take the British years to understand, let alone counter. Within 6 weeks, every major Allied warship would be equipped with countermeasures. Within 5 months, over 3,000 Allied vessels would be magnetically invisible to German mines. The speed of this transformation would send shockwaves through German naval command that would reverberate until the war's end. The revelation began on September 3, 1939, mere hours after Britain declared war on Germany. U-boats, U-13, U-14 and U-17 slipped from their bases carrying a cargo more valuable than torpedoes. Each submarine carried TMB magnetic mines, weapons that German scientists promised would revolutionize naval warfare. Unlike contact mines that required a ship to physically strike them, these devices detected the magnetic signature of steel hulls passing overhead. The mines would detonate beneath the ship's keel, breaking its back with the force of the explosion transmitted through incompressible water. German scientists had calculated that a steel ship concentrated the Earth's magnetic field through its hull, creating a distinctive signature that could trigger the mine from depths of up to 50 feet. The weapon was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its effect. Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Lieber, commanding U-38, would later write in his war diary, discovered after Germany's surrender, "We carry the weapon that will bring England to its knees. No minesweeper can find them. No method exists to defeat them. The Tommies will starve before they understand what strikes them." His confidence reflected the entire Kriegsmarine's belief in their technological superiority. By mid-September, mysterious explosions began claiming ships in waters previously swept clear of conventional mines. The steamship Magdeburg vanished in a massive explosion on September 10th, followed by the city of Paris 6 days later. Unlike ships hit by contact mines, which showed localized damage at the point of impact, these vessels displayed catastrophic structural failure. Survivors reported their ships breaking in half, lifted from the water by an enormous force from below. During October and November 1939, Britain lost more than 200,000 tons of shipping to German mines. The Admiralty was forced to close ports, reroute convoys, and watch helplessly as ships exploded in supposedly safe waters. Each incident paralyzed shipping lanes for days while minesweepers futilely dragged their cables through waters that held no conventional mines. At HMS Vernon, the Royal Navy's mine warfare school in Portsmouth, scientists and officers worked around the clock trying to understand the new threat. They knew magnetic mines existed in theory. Britain had developed primitive versions in 1918, but the German models were clearly far more sophisticated. The Royal Navy examined over 200 mines in October and November 1939, all contact mines. None explained the mysterious sinkings. The breakthrough came from inter-service rivalry within the German military. The Luftwaffe, eager to claim credit for strangling British shipping, began dropping their own magnetic mines by parachute. These Luftmine A and Luftmine B weapons weighed up to 1,000 kilograms and descended slowly under silk canopies. On the night of November 22, 1939, a Heinkel Ha-59 floatplane approached the Thames Estuary at low altitude. British anti-aircraft gunners spotted the aircraft and opened fire. The pilot, startled by the unexpected resistance, released his mines prematurely and fled. One mine landed on the mudflats at Shoeburyness during low tide. Army sentries at the nearby garrison spotted the parachute draped across the mud and immediately notified naval intelligence. Commander John Ouvry, then a lieutenant commander and Rendermine's safe officer at HMS Vernon, was already investigating reports of German parachute mines in the area. When word reached him of the intact mine, he understood immediately what they had found. This was the secret weapon devastating British shipping. But approaching it would require extraordinary courage and methodical preparation. The mine lay 500 yards from shore, partially buried in mud that would be covered by the next high tide. Ouvry assembled his team: Lieutenant Commander Roger Lewis, Chief Petty Officer Charles Baldwin, and able seaman Alexander Verncombe. Each man stripped himself of anything magnetic: belt buckles, keys, coins, watches, even the metal grommets from their boots were removed. They carried tools specially forged from non-magnetic brass. As Ouvry approached the mine, he later recalled, "Every step might be my last." We knew the Germans were clever. There might be anti-tampering devices, time delays, or booby traps, but we had to know how it worked. The entire war at sea might depend on what we discovered. The mine was 8 feet long and 2 feet in diameter, made of aluminum to avoid magnetic detection by minesweepers. Carefully, methodically, Ouvry began removing the fuse mechanism, while Lewis took detailed notes from a safe distance. If the mine detonated, at least the next team would know what had killed them. After an hour of painstaking work, Ouvry successfully removed the magnetic trigger mechanism. The recovered fuse was rushed to physicist Albert B. Wood at Portsmouth, who, with assistants W.F.B. Shaw and H.W. Kelly, dismantled it the following day and discovered its internal induction magnetometer. The German secret was revealed: a magnetic needle that detected changes in the local magnetic field. When a ship passed overhead, the needle would move, completing an electrical circuit that detonated 300 kilograms of explosive. Winston Churchill, then First Lord of the Admiralty, was briefed immediately. King George VI personally decorated Ouvry with the Distinguished Service Order on December 19, 1939, in a ceremony at HMS Vernon, but medals were secondary to the real prize: understanding how to defeat the weapon. The solution came from an unlikely source. Commander Charles Goodeve, a Canadian chemist in the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, coined the term degaussing from the unit of measurement for magnetic field strength, the Gauss, named after mathematician Carl Friedrich Gauss. If ships generated magnetic fields, Goodeve reasoned, those fields could be neutralized. The principle was elegantly simple. A ship's hull concentrated the Earth's magnetic field with the North Pole pointing downward in the northern hemisphere. By wrapping electrical cables around the ship and passing current through them, an opposite magnetic field could be generated, cancelling out the ship's signature. The process would make ships magnetically invisible to German mines. Initially, major warships had copper degaussing coils fitted around their hulls, energized by the ship's electrical system. HMS Ark Royal, one of the Royal Navy's most valuable aircraft carriers, was among the first to be fitted. But this permanent installation was expensive and required significant electrical power that smaller vessels couldn't generate. Goodeve developed a simpler solution called wiping. A current-carrying cable would be dragged up and down a ship's hull, temporarily cancelling its magnetic signature. The process took only hours and protected ships for several months before requiring renewal. It was crude but effective, and could be performed at any port with basic electrical equipment. The scale of implementation was staggering. During the 4-day period before the Dunkirk evacuation in May 1940, over 400 ships were degaussed. Stations were established at every major British port, working around the clock to process vessels. Merchant ships, warships, fishing boats, anything with a steel hull received treatment. By January 1940, just 6 weeks after Ouvry's defusing, the first Wellington bomber equipped with a magnetic minesweeping ring successfully destroyed a German magnetic mine on January 8, 1940. The aircraft carried a 48-foot diameter aluminum ring energized with electrical current, creating a massive magnetic field that triggered mines from a safe altitude. The Germans were stunned by the speed of the British response. Korvettenkapitän Friedrich Rug, head of German mine development, wrote in a February 1940 report, "The British have implemented countermeasures with impossible speed. Our 3-year advantage has evaporated in 3 months. every calculation of enemy capability has proven worthless. German confidence in their technological superiority began to crack. In March 1940, aerial reconnaissance photographed the distinctive Degaussing cables wrapped around British warships in scupper flow. A photograph of the ocean liner Queen Mary in New York Harbor clearly showed her Degaussing coil, revealing that the technology had been shared with the Americans before they even entered the war. By August 1940, Winston Churchill confidently told Parliament that the magnetic mine had been effectively mastered. In 5 months, these two methods of degaussing had resulted in 1,000 wiped ships and a further 2,000 ships carrying their own cables. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's U-boat force, recorded his frustration in his war diary. In May 1940, he wrote, "I doubt whether men have ever had to rely on such a useless weapon," referring to the magnetic torpedoes that used the same technology as the mines. The magnetic triggers that were supposed to guarantee hits were now failing against degaussed ships. The psychological impact on German naval personnel was profound. Captain Lieutenant Fritz Julius Lemp of U-30, which had laid some of the first magnetic mines, wrote to his brother, "Our secret weapon is secret no more. The British adapt faster than we can innovate. Every technical advantage we possess seems temporary, fleeting." HMS Belfast, one of the Royal Navy's newest cruisers, had fallen victim to a magnetic mine on November 21, 1939, laid by U-21 on November 4. The mine broke her back, damaged her engines and boilers, and injured 46 men. She would be under repair for nearly 3 years, but Belfast was among the last major warships to fall victim to German magnetic mines. The preserved mine now displayed aboard her serves as a reminder of both vulnerability and victory. German attempts to respond revealed the limitations of their industrial and scientific capacity. They developed pressure mines that detected the water displacement of passing ships and acoustic mines that listened for engine noise. But each innovation was quickly countered. The British developed noisemakers to trigger acoustic mines and altered ship speeds to defeat pressure sensors. More damaging than the technical defeat was the revelation of German industrial weakness. Germany had planned to produce 50,000 magnetic mines, but by spring 1940 had manufactured only 1,500. The mines required sophisticated magnetic sensors, and Germany lacked sufficient supplies of nickel and copper for mass production. The British, meanwhile, demonstrated their industrial might. Within months, they had produced thousands of degaussing installations, millions of feet of copper cable, and equipped an entire fleet with countermeasures. The United States, still neutral, began degaussing their merchant vessels and sharing intelligence with Britain. German scientists scrambled to develop new variants. They created mines with delayed arming mechanisms that wouldn't activate until several ships had passed, hoping to defeat regular sweeping operations. They added ship counters that would only trigger on the 3rd or 5th vessel. Each innovation required more complexity, more scarce materials, and more sophisticated manufacturing. By late 1940, German naval intelligence intercepted British communications discussing their mine countermeasures with casual confidence. Ships' captains reported degaussing schedules like routine maintenance. The weapon that was supposed to strangle Britain without risking German lives had become a minor inconvenience. The failure resonated through German strategic planning. Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain, had counted on magnetic mines to protect landing beaches from the Royal Navy. Without effective mine barriers, German invasion barges would be helpless against British warships. The mine's failure contributed to the invasion's indefinite postponement. German submariners began refusing to carry mines, preferring to use their limited torpedo storage for conventional weapons. U-boat commander Herbert Schulze wrote, "Why waste space on weapons the enemy has already defeated? Every mine we carry is a torpedo we cannot fire at a real target." The technological defeat exposed deeper German weaknesses. Their vaunted scientific superiority proved hollow when faced with British adaptability and American industrial support. The same nation that produced sophisticated magnetic sensors couldn't manufacture them in sufficient quantities. The regime that promised technological miracles delivered weapons that worked perfectly in theory, but failed when confronted by determined countermeasures. The double L sweep, developed by Charles Goodeve, consisted of two cables towed behind non-magnetic vessels with electrical current passing between them, creating a magnetic field that could clear 10 acres of seabed at once. By March 1940, the method had cleared 74 mines, and by June 300 mines had been destroyed. The sweeping operations revealed the extent of German mining efforts and their ultimate futility. British minesweepers methodically cleared channels, often finding dozens of sophisticated mines that had cost Germany precious resources to develop and deploy. Each recovered mine provided more intelligence about German capabilities and limitations. American observers, officially neutral but increasingly supporting Britain, watched with interest. Captain Jerry Land of the U.S. Maritime Commission reported to Washington, "The British have defeated the German magnetic mine through scientific understanding and industrial application. They share their methods freely with us. German secrecy has gained them nothing." The U.S. Navy began its own degaussing program, establishing facilities at major ports. American shipyards incorporated degaussing systems into new construction. Liberty ships, the cargo vessels that would sustain Allied armies, were designed with built-in degaussing coils. By the time America entered the war, its entire merchant fleet was protected. German efforts to maintain mine effectiveness became increasingly desperate. They developed combination mines that required both magnetic and acoustic signatures to detonate. These weapons were so complex that they often failed to work at all. German sailors joked darkly that their mines were more dangerous to handle than to the enemy. The mine warfare revelation extended beyond technology to expose fundamental flaws in Nazi ideology. The regime that proclaimed German racial and intellectual superiority watched British scientists, including Jewish refugees from Germany, solve their secret weapons in weeks. The nation that promised technological miracles through Aryan genius was outmatched by democratic cooperation and industrial might. Dr. Rudolf Kuhnhold, who had worked on German radar development, learned of the magnetic mine's rapid defeat through neutral sources. He wrote in his private papers, "The mine failure demonstrates our systematic weakness. We work in isolation, they work in cooperation. We guard secrets, they share solutions. We promise miracles, they deliver results." By mid-1941, magnetic mines had become so ineffective that German naval strategy abandoned them as a primary weapon. Resources were redirected to U-boat construction and conventional torpedoes. The weapon that was supposed to win the war without risking German lives had consumed vast resources for minimal return. During 1942 alone, German U-boats laid only 96 mines that resulted in ship losses, compared to hundreds of vessels sunk by torpedoes. The elaborate mining operations that required careful navigation to enemy waters and exposed submarines to detection had become pointless exercises. Commanders preferred direct attacks where they could at least confirm results. The psychological impact on German naval officers persisted throughout the war. Kapitän zur See Hermann von Fischl, captured in 1943, told interrogators, "When we learned how quickly you defeated the magnetic mine, we knew the war was lost. If you could neutralize our best secret weapon in weeks, what chance did we have?" British scientific teams, emboldened by their success, approached each new German weapon with confidence. When acoustic mines appeared, they developed noise-making countermeasures within months. When pressure mines were introduced in 1943, they altered ship speeds and routes to defeat them. Each German innovation met rapid Allied response. The Degaussing program's success had strategic implications beyond mine defense. It demonstrated Allied scientific cooperation, with British, American, and Canadian scientists sharing information freely. It showcased industrial capacity, with thousands of installations operating continuously. It revealed intelligence capabilities, with captured German weapons quickly analyzed and countered. German attempts to gather intelligence on Allied countermeasures repeatedly failed. Spy networks reported on degaussing operations but couldn't provide technical details. Aerial reconnaissance showed degaussing cables but couldn't reveal the electrical specifications. U-boat commanders observed degaussed ships but couldn't understand the science behind their protection. The contrast with German secrecy was stark. While the Nazis compartmentalized information and restricted scientific collaboration, the Allies shared knowledge openly among themselves. British degaussing techniques were published in technical journals accessible to any Allied scientist. American improvements were immediately shared with Britain. Canadian innovations were implemented across the Allied fleet. By 1943, degaussing had become so routine that it rarely appeared in operational reports. Ships were degaussed on schedule like they were refueled or reprovisioned. The process that had seemed miraculous in 1940 was now mundane maintenance. German mines still posed threats, but they were manageable hazards rather than war-winning weapons. The industrial scale of degaussing operations dwarfed German production capabilities. Britain alone operated over 100 permanent degaussing stations, each capable of processing multiple ships daily. Thousands of technicians were trained in the procedure. Miles of copper cable were produced monthly. The organizational achievement matched the technical success. German naval architects attempted to design non-magnetic ships using wood and non-ferrous metals, but these vessels were expensive, slow, and vulnerable. The few constructed proved that avoiding magnetism was impractical compared to neutralizing it. German innovation was constrained by resource limitations that didn't affect the Allies. The mine war's psychological dimension extended to German civilians. Propaganda had promised that magnetic mines would starve Britain into submission. When British shipping continued despite the mines, German confidence in their technological superiority eroded. Workers in mine factories questioned why they were producing weapons the enemy had already defeated. Allied psychological warfare exploited the mine failure. BBC broadcasts detailed degaussing successes, often exaggerating their effectiveness to demoralize German listeners. Leaflets dropped over German naval bases showed photographs of degaussed ships passing safely through minefields. The message was clear. German secret weapons held no secrets from the Allies. The scientific mobilization triggered by the magnetic mine threat created lasting advantages for the Allies. Research teams formed to counter mines later worked on radar, sonar, and code breaking. Scientists who learned to cooperate across national boundaries continued collaborating throughout the war. The emergency response to magnetic mines established patterns of scientific cooperation that persisted. German scientists who had developed the magnetic mine watched their creation's failure with professional interest and personal despair. Dr. Helmuth Walter, who had contributed to mine development, later reflected, "We created an elegant weapon defeated by a simple solution. Our failure was not technical but systematic. We worked in isolation while our enemies worked together." The economic impact of the failed mine campaign strained German resources. Each sophisticated mine cost approximately 3,000 Reichsmarks to produce, equivalent to 3 months' wages for a skilled worker. Thousands were produced and deployed. The return on investment was negative. The resources consumed exceeded any damage inflicted on Allied shipping. Allied convoy operations, initially paralyzed by magnetic mine fears, resumed with confidence once degaussing was widespread. Merchant sailors who had refused to sail through mined waters returned to duty, knowing their ships were protected. Insurance rates, which had skyrocketed due to mine losses, decreased as degaussing proved effective. The economic warfare Germany intended to wage through mines had backfired. The technological cat-and-mouse game continued throughout the war, but momentum had shifted decisively. When Germany deployed the Oyster pressure mine in June 1944 during the Normandy invasion, hoping to disrupt Allied supply lines, the weapons proved ineffective. Allied ships simply adjusted their speeds and routes, having anticipated this development for years. By 1944, German submarine commanders considered mine-laying missions as punishment duty. The weapons they carried were increasingly sophisticated but decreasingly effective. U-boat war diaries from this period reflect resignation rather than enthusiasm. Commanders recorded laying mines with no expectation of success, fulfilling orders that seemed pointless. The intelligence gathered from captured German mines provided insights beyond mine warfare. Analysis of components revealed German manufacturing capabilities, material shortages, and quality control problems. Serial numbers on parts allowed Allied intelligence to track production rates and factory locations. The mines became windows into German industrial capacity. British confidence in their scientific superiority, validated by the magnetic mine victory, influenced strategic decisions throughout the war. When Germany deployed V-weapons, acoustic homing torpedoes, and jet aircraft, Allied leaders remained confident that countermeasures would be found. The rapid defeat of the magnetic mine had proven that German secret weapons could be mastered. The organizational structures created to manage degaussing became templates for other wartime programs. The coordination between military, scientific, and industrial sectors established during the mine crisis was replicated for radar development, convoy protection, and invasion planning. The emergency response to magnetic mines had created lasting institutional capabilities. In the Pacific Theater, American forces applied lessons learned from the European Mine War. Japanese magnetic mines, based on German designs, were quickly neutralized using degaussing techniques perfected against German weapons. The knowledge transfer was seamless, the response immediate. What had taken months to develop against Germany took days to implement against Japan. German post-war analysis of the magnetic mine failure was brutal in its honesty. Admiral Dönitz, writing in his memoirs, admitted, "We placed too much faith in technical superiority without considering enemy countermeasures. The magnetic mine should have been one weapon among many, not a war-winning miracle. Our failure was conceptual, not technical." Karl Kaufmann, Gauleiter of Hamburg, who had witnessed the mine production efforts, wrote after the war, "We watched thousands of workers produce weapons that the enemy had already defeated." The regime's promise of wonder weapons was exposed as fantasy. The magnetic mine's failure was the first crack in our belief in German superiority. Veterans of the mine war carried its lessons into the post-war period. British scientists who had worked on degaussing became leaders in civilian technology development. American naval officers who had implemented countermeasures shaped Cold War naval strategy. The magnetic mine crisis had created expertise that extended far beyond its original context. The preserved German magnetic mine, still displayed in HMS Belfast in London, stands as a monument to multiple victories. It represents Ouvry's courage in defusing an unknown weapon, British scientific ingenuity in developing countermeasures, and Allied industrial might in implementing solutions. Most importantly, it symbolizes the defeat of Nazi assumptions about technological and racial superiority. School groups visiting HMS Belfast often ask why such a simple-looking device caused such fear. Guides explain that the mine's true power lay not in its explosive charge, but in its psychological impact. For a brief period, it made the seas impassable and Britain vulnerable. Its rapid defeat proved that no secret weapon could overcome determination, cooperation, and industrial capacity. The speed of the Allied response to magnetic mines shocked not just Germany, but neutral observers worldwide. Swedish naval attaché Erik af Klint reported to Stockholm, "In 10 weeks, the British have nullified a weapon system Germany spent 3 years developing. This demonstrates not just technical capability, but organizational superiority that will determine the war's outcome." Swiss intelligence, monitoring both sides, noted the fundamental difference in approaches. Their reports described German scientists working in enforced secrecy, forbidden to discuss problems or share solutions. Meanwhile, Allied scientists held conferences, published papers, and freely exchanged ideas. The contrast explained the different outcomes. The magnetic mine episode revealed fundamental differences in how the opposing sides approached warfare. Germany sought decisive technical advantages through secret weapons. The Allies relied on systematic responses, industrial scaling, and information sharing. The German approach produced spectacular innovations that failed when countered. The Allied approach produced steady advantages that accumulated into victory. Modern naval historians consider the magnetic mine crisis a turning point not in the war's outcome, but in its character. The rapid Allied response demonstrated that the war would be won through industrial production and scientific adaptation rather than secret weapons or tactical brilliance. Germany could innovate but not sustain. The Allies could absorb, adapt, and overwhelm. The human dimension of the magnetic mine defeat resonated through German naval ranks. Young officers who had joined the Kriegsmarine believing in German technical superiority watched that belief shatter, Enlisted sailors who had been told they served the world's most advanced navy discovered they were outnumbered and outproduced. The psychological impact preceded and amplified later military defeats. Allied sailors, initially terrified of invisible mines that could destroy their ships without warning, gained confidence from Degaussing's success. "The ship's been wiped," became reassuring words in dangerous waters. Merchant seamen who had considered refusing dangerous voyages returned to duty, knowing science protected them. The fear that had paralyzed shipping was replaced by routine precaution. The technological transfer from military to civilian applications began even during the war. Degaussing techniques were adapted for protecting industrial equipment from magnetic interference. The precision measurement of magnetic fields developed for mine detection improved navigation systems. Scientists who had rushed to counter German mines later applied their expertise to peaceful purposes. The institutional memory of the magnetic mine crisis influenced Allied planning for the invasion of Europe. Assuming Germany would use advanced mines to protect invasion beaches, Allied forces prepared comprehensive countermeasures. Specialized mine-sweeping units were trained and equipped. The invasion fleet was thoroughly degaussed. German mine barriers, when encountered, were quickly neutralized using techniques developed in 1940. Intelligence services on both sides studied the magnetic mine episode for lessons in technical intelligence and countermeasure development. The British success in rapidly analyzing and defeating the weapon became a textbook example of effective technical intelligence. The German failure to anticipate countermeasures became a cautionary tale about overconfidence in secret weapons. By war's end, magnetic mines had become almost irrelevant to naval operations. Allied ships were routinely degaussed, sweeping techniques were perfected, and detection equipment was sophisticated. German mines still caused occasional losses, but they were tactical inconveniences rather than strategic threats. The weapon that was supposed to transform naval warfare had become a footnote. The preserved technical documents from both sides reveal the gulf between German and Allied approaches. German documents emphasize secrecy, compartmentalization, and technical sophistication. Allied documents emphasize cooperation, standardization, and mass production. The German approach produced brilliant failures. The Allied approach produced effective solutions. Educational institutions in Britain and America still use the magnetic mine crisis as a case study in crisis management and technical problem-solving. Business schools examine the organizational response. Engineering programs study the technical solutions. Military academies analyze the strategic implications. The episode's lessons extend far beyond its historical context. The veterans who participated in the magnetic mine crisis carried profound lessons from their experience. John Ouvry, who risked his life defusing the first mine, later reflected, "We faced a weapon that seemed invincible until we understood it. Once understood, it was simply another problem to solve. The Germans never grasped that secrecy is less powerful than knowledge shared." Charles Goodeve, who developed Degaussing, became a leader in post-war scientific development. He often told colleagues, "The magnetic mine taught us that no single weapon wins wars." Victory comes from systematic response, industrial application, and refusing to be paralyzed by fear. The Germans gave us a gift. They taught us we could master any challenge through cooperation. The story that began on the mudflats of Shoeburyness in November 1939 had revealed fundamental truths about modern warfare. Technical innovation alone couldn't determine victory. Industrial capacity mattered more than scientific brilliance. Cooperation defeated secrecy. The magnetic mine that was meant to starve Britain instead fed Allied confidence. The weapon designed to demonstrate German superiority proved Allied adaptability. In the end, the story of German magnetic mines and Allied degaussing is a story of assumptions shattered and realities revealed. The Germans assumed their secret would remain secret, their advantage permanent, their enemies helpless. They discovered that secrets can be solved, advantages neutralized, and enemies more capable than imagined. The transformation from terror to irrelevance took less than a year. The weapon that paralyzed British shipping in November 1939 was routine hazard by November 1940. The magnetic mine's failure was complete, comprehensive, and permanent. It stands as history's evidence that in modern warfare there are no permanent secrets, no lasting advantages, and no weapons that cannot be countered by determination, cooperation, and industrial might.